Okay.
Perfect.
Good evening, everyone. I am Tashia McDougald. I am the CEO of Dual Career Success, and I am a part of our private group of our top producing dual career realtors. And today we have Bethany Redding. She is the CEO of MREA Assist. Did I say it right, Bethany?
Just one A, but yeah,
Okay.
pretty much. It stands for My Real Estate Assistant. So just MRE Assist.
Yes. Okay. Because you saw I spelled it out. I was like, okay, I'm saying the whole. You know, that's how I always introduced it, right? To everyone. Yeah. I said, you guys need to call MREA Assist.
There you go. Yeah. And that's great. That's great.
Yes. Well, guys, so Bethany is going to talk to you guys about her company and how this company will save you time in your business. She's going to start her PowerPoint, and I'm going to give the floor to her because her time is valuable. So Bethany, you go ahead. I think I gave you share permission.
Thanks. Okay, awesome. Yeah, before I launch the presentation itself, thank you so much for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here today. We're super excited to get in front of high-level dual career agents. That's definitely something we're super familiar with. We have a lot of agents who are dual career. Having leverage when you're in that situation is so important. And so my plan for today is to give you some insight as to how our services can help you with that leverage, but then also just talk a little bit about like what we're seeing in the market, get some of your feedback on like what's going on out in the world, and then just give you some insight into the benefits of having a transaction coordinator in general. So beyond just our services, what some of the other benefits are to having some of that leverage behind you to back you up in this crazy real estate market that we're in. So let me go ahead and see if I can get this PowerPoint going. And hopefully this will work. Okay, can you guys all see?
Yes.
Main PowerPoint? Okay, perfect. All right, and I'm navigating two screens here, so let me see if I can get this to get a little bigger. Okay. All right, so we're going to talk about how to run your business on autopilot. That's the awesome title that Tashia came up with. I liked it, so threw it in here. So in the chat or out loud, we've only got 3 of you on here, so feel free to chime in verbally as well, but either in the chat or verbally, what are some of the biggest challenges that you guys are facing in managing your own transactions, like managing your real estate business?
Bethany, I would say really managing all of the checklists. You know, once a contract lands, then the real work starts as far as moving it, you know, from contract to close. Right. And so sometimes, you know, we get, you know, you start kind of working out of your head because you're on fight or flight and then trying to manage everything. So I think that is, you know, one of the biggest challenges that I myself have. And then with all of the other, you know, continuing to you know, do business development while you're still trying to make sure. So, you know, wearing the multiple hats. And it's one of the challenges that, you know, probably the biggest challenge that I hear from some of the other agents, you know, and some of the other mastermind groups that I'm in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, navigating all those different pieces and continuing the lead generation, right? Like continuing to bring in new business while you're having to stop everything to get this buyer to go through to the settlement and like all that. And Gabriella mentioned worrying about missing something. Yeah, that's a big one too. Just if you are keeping it all in your head, like you're bound to miss something, right? Like you can't keep everything in your head. And that's one of the things that we've adapted as a transaction management company is putting together systems and checklists and processes in place that we can duplicate on every single transaction. So my entire team is operating the same way every single time, which also is one of the benefits to having a TC. You know, as the agent, that every deal will be handled the same way because that's what we've set up to do, so that you're not worrying about missing something. You know, it's always going to happen. Okay, so I've come up with a list too, based on feedback and things we hear. And so I'm just going to kind of run through my list of options too, of like what challenges there are, similar to things you've already mentioned. But one of the big ones we hear all the time is missed deadlines, late earnest money deposits, challenges with email management and organization, poor communication, no time to lead generate, work-life balance, especially dual career. Let's see, what else? Operating from your phone, late night work, no schedule, no vacation or working on vacation, difficulty balancing dual career, missing out on personal and family activities, out of compliance with your brokerage. And one of the big ones that we hear is not getting paid on time because of being out of compliance with your brokerage. Those are like kind of go hand in hand together. So these are some of the big ones we hear. Sounds like you guys are probably experiencing some of these challenges, hence why you're here, and why you're interested in learning how a TC can help navigate some of these things off your plate, and free you up to get some of these things back, like your time, go on vacation, things like that. Okay, so if you find that any of these challenges are relatable, which we know they are from what you described, I'd like to talk about some best practices that you can implement today with a transaction coordinator. So 3 methods for leveraging with a contract to close process through a transaction coordinator would be the contract to close process itself, leveraging the whole ratified contract to settlement, whether it be with a listing or a buyer. Listing preparation leverage. So that would be like, okay, you have a seller, they're ready to go on the market. Now what? Like there's all these little things that have to happen in order to get that property listed so you can get it under contract and get it sold. And also buyer side leverage. So you have a new buyer, they're ready to show, be shown property, you're out showing them property. You need to get them with a buyer agency agreement. Oh, now you've got to write an offer, like all those things to get them under contract. So those are basically our 3 areas of leverage that can be provided through a TC. So of course, all of these can be implemented individually. We obviously recommend using them all together because that's going to allow you to have the most consistent leverage across your business. We do have agents that kind of pick and choose our services as needed, as their budget allows. That's totally fine too. Our services are super flexible in that way, and we can talk a little more about that later. However, we've seen the most success for agents that have just totally adapted the whole TC services to make that just part of their business process. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of go into each of those different areas and give you some more detail about how those services work. So the contract to close leverage. The main purpose of this is to leverage your time so that you can focus on your 20%, which is your income producing activities. So really anything you can imagine that takes up your time administratively during the contract to close process is something that your TC could help take off your plate. If it's not producing income, such as showing property, taking listing appointments, sitting at open houses, networking with others in your industry, like all those things that are going to produce income are the only things you should be focusing your time on. So everything else that you can think of will probably be covered under the TC. And we do that by helping to keep track of all the details for you. So we're managing a checklist, we're managing email communication, communication with the lender, the title company, all of the parties, your client, fielding their calls, their questions, kind of taking that stuff off your plate. So it doesn't mean that it eliminates your need to keep track of what's happening in the transaction as the agent. We're just going to be helping to leverage you so that we're taking on the primary and kind of giving you updates and letting you know where we need your input and your help. Another big item that we'll do as part of the process is the reviewing of your contracts and submitting them for brokerage compliance. So no matter what brokerage you're with, there's probably some kind of a process you have to go through to get the contract to your broker so that then when they get that commission check, they can issue you your split or whatever it is that you have with your brokerage to make sure you get paid. So we'll take care of that process and make sure that everything's followed, all of your initials are there, signatures are present, everything gets submitted to your brokerage and it gets approved. Another big thing that we'll help with is the EMD deposit. I mean, that's a pretty big one. If it doesn't happen on time or there's some kind of an issue with getting that in, I mean, it could void the contract. You know, that's a voidable item. It's something you don't want to wait on or be late on. So from the very beginning of the process, we're helping to manage that, make sure your buyer gets it in, or from a seller side, making sure the buyer side is performing and that gets submitted. We don't want that to come up at closing and now closing can't happen because the buyer never submitted their EMD. That's happened. And so we make sure that we follow that process to make sure everyone knows that EMD, hey, if it's not in, we're like hounding everybody. This EMD has not been turned in. It's not been deposited. The lender's not going to be able to finalize the loan without it. Like, we're sticklers on EMDs. And then along with that would be managing those contingency deadlines. So making sure that those things don't get missed. We're sending you updates and reminders to make sure that you know when they're coming up and making sure that any action that needs to be taken is done. So you're still the agent, you're the licensed expert. We're not going to take the lead on removing a contingency or doing anything of that nature. However, we're going to let you know, hey, this deadline's approaching. How do you want to handle it? Are we putting notice on the other side? Are we helping to prepare a notice from your side? Are we just checking in with somebody on the update, like where we are? Whatever it is, you're going to guide us, but you're going to know it's happening so that you're not caught off guard. Managing all of the parties. So there's a lot of moving parts in the contract to close process. There's a lot of people involved, and it's a lot of project management, which is basically what you end up being as an agent, is trying to navigate everybody's role, make sure everyone's doing their job so that you can do your job, right? So one thing we're going to do is take a little bit of that off your plate. So we're going to manage the lender, the title company, the other agent, and your client. So we're going to be a go-to. If someone's calling you, you can direct them back to us. If you get emails and we're not on it, forward it on over. We'll take care of it. If there's anything that comes up we can't do, we'll let you know. But for the most part, we can probably be the resource that people are looking for to get what they need. Things like the title info sheets, like they request a form to be filled out at the beginning of the transaction. Your client has to fill out a form for them. We're going to help rally that information, like, hey, seller, title company needs that payoff information so that we can get to closing and your loan can be paid off. All those little follow-up items we're going to help take care of for you. Another big piece, which we kind of mentioned earlier as far as a challenge, would be like the paperwork side, right? Like generating documents throughout, addendums, notices, all those things that are just kind of time sucks that if you're not sitting in front of a computer all day for your real estate business, when is that happening? That's happening at night or in your lunch break or on the weekends. So any of those things that we can help leverage too. So, hey, we need an extension prepped. Great, you let your TC know, hey, this file is extending, we need an extension through this date, here's the verbiage. You send them a quick text, we'll go prepare it, get it signed by your client, get it out to the other agent, track it all the way till it's fully signed and make sure everyone gets copies of the fully signed document. So we're going to track those kind of things for you and make sure they happen in a timely fashion. Inspections are another big topic. So we can help with scheduling inspections. So that's going to be another big one in situations where you do have inspections. I know, a lot of the contracts we see these days are either info only or void only inspections, or maybe there aren't any, but we do still have them. So if you ever have inspections, we can help with either coordinating them for your buyer sides, or if we're on the list side, making sure that the buyer side's meeting all of their deadlines and that we're letting your sellers know when inspections are happening, so that inspectors don't show up to their house and they're like, whoa, I didn't know there was a termite inspection happening today. No one told me. Oh yeah, I forgot to send you that note at, whatever. So we're going to help with those things. Now we do have some as far as inspections go. So if you have a new buyer under contract and you need a home inspection scheduled, we do need a full 10-day contingency period in order to help with that scheduling. Otherwise, it sets us up for failure, basically, in this crazy market where we're seeing 5-day inspections and things like that. When it's short, like those timeframes, typically our agents are just they're scheduling it while they're ratifying contracts, because inspectors are busy, them and their clients are busy. So it just makes sense for you to initiate that at the beginning, and then we can kind of follow through on making sure everyone knows where and when it's happening. But that initial phase is something that you could go ahead and do, unless it's, like I said, 10 or more days, which we do see. And then that way we have plenty of time. So that's that for inspections. As far as prepping for closing, so scheduling that walkthrough and closing, I know for us, it's definitely kind of a cumbersome process to get everybody's schedules coordinated for things like the walkthrough and closing. So that's one less thing you have to worry about. You tell us what your availability is, and then we'll take care of the rest. So typically our process would look like, hey, title company, what are your options? Send them to you. What's your preference before we go to the client? And then we present to the client the options that fit your schedule from the title company's options. So it's kind of an easy flow, but that way you're not necessarily involved in the back and forth. And then we'll take it from there. Same thing for walkthroughs. And then we do send out a week before closing reminder and detail email, which is super helpful for whether it's listing or buyer side. That week before closing email is going to include the closing details, where and when to be, what to bring with you, reminders of utility transfers. For sellers, hey, make sure you contact your homeowner's insurance and that policy. Reminders for keys and fobs, make sure you leave those on the counter, walkthrough details. So everyone's got a full big checklist, and the amount of times that sellers and buyers will contact us back saying, oh my gosh, this email is so great. It answers all of my questions I was having at this point, getting close to the end. All their questions are going to be answered in this email. And if they're not, they know then to call us. We can help walk them through anything else that they might need at that point. And we typically then follow up 2 or 3 days prior to closing, again, with just a final touch of, hey, just a reminder, your walkthrough is tomorrow and closing is at this date and time and this location. So we're just making sure to over communicate, make sure that the client has everything they need. And then along with that would be the weekly updates. So every Friday, you and your client will get an update email with all of the contingencies outlined. So there's that weekly reminder of what those deadlines are, and then also a recap of what's happened in the past week. So it's making you look great to your clients. You have a rock star team that's keeping you on track. We keep a line of communication open with the client using that email. And it's the perfect touch point for you to take that email and then do a touch yourself with your client. Hey, Bethany just sent out the weekly update. Do you have any questions? Everything's on track. We're looking great. Yes, yes, yes. Now go leave me a Zillow review, whatever it looks like, right? But it's just a great opportunity for you to then touch with your client. And at the same time, we're keeping that line of communication open with the client from our end too. So that's the contract to close process. Now we will have a Q&A portion at the end, but does anyone have questions, immediate questions that they want to get off their plate now, or just dropping them in chat and we can answer them later? Anything before we go? 3, 2, 1. Okay, moving on.
You're doing great, Bethany. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so now for some of our other leverage services. So for the listing preparation, now this is, you have a new listing, a seller's ready to sign their listing paperwork and they want to go on the market soon. So what we have are what we call our time saver services. And basically that's going to help you with some of the other administrative work, paperwork wise and data entry wise for your listings. So what that's going to look like is agency document preparation and compliance. So that would mean preparing the listing agreement and all of the disclosures that are required, following through to make sure they get fully signed and filled out by your client, and then submitting that package to your brokerage for approval and following through to approval. So if for some reason something gets kicked back by your broker, we'll go and correct it. Like, oh, an initial got missed here. Okay, great. We'll grab that initial, or they might call out the specific disclosures required that we weren't aware of at the beginning. Whatever that looks like, we're going to follow it all the way through. So those are two separate services in our system, one listing agreement preparation and listing agreement compliance. They go really well together, as you can see. However, they can be opted in for separately. So you might have already had a listing agreement signed, but you didn't get it submitted for compliance. So you just need the compliance piece. Or maybe the compliance piece is not that difficult. You just want us to prepare the paperwork and you'll submit it when you're ready. You can pick and choose, but obviously they work really well together from the standpoint of we prepared the documents. If we then do compliance, we're for sure going to correct anything that we need to do. So it kind of works really well. The other piece to listing prep would be the MLS entry. So, you know, the process of entering a listing in MLS in Bright is not like super crazy. It's just time consuming, right? So it's a matter of sitting down, starting the listing, making sure all those details are in there, uploading the photos, disclosures, showing instructions, like just all those things. It takes up time. So it's something that you can leverage. And basically we would take that entire process off your plate. So we would enter the listing, start the draft listing. It would include the uploading of photos and all the documents, so disclosures, floor plans, special feature pages, whatever documents that you might have from the client that need to be uploaded, and setting up showing instructions. So that could look like either just putting everything, you know, if you have people contact you for showings, we can put that information in. Most of our agents are using showing time. It's the most convenient. And if you're not using it, definitely start, because that would definitely leverage your time as well by having showings set up there. And you can directly have your clients contacted to approve showings, so you don't have to be the middle person. Just as a little tip, I know some agents like to have their hands on that, but for you guys, your dual career, you're not always available during the day. You don't want to miss a showing approval. So having your client do that and setting that expectation with them that they're going to be responsible for those is definitely helpful. Okay, and then switching gears to the buyer side, very similar in terms of the administrative abilities that we have for the paperwork and compliance. So the first thing would be the agency document preparation and compliance. So preparing that agreement and any disclosures, for the most part, it would be like disclosures from your brokerage. So if you have an affiliated business agreement or, you know, like a consumer notice, any of those kind of things that your brokerage wants, we'll make sure those are prepared. Following through to make sure everything gets signed. We're letting you know, like, we have a situation right now where we prepared a buyer agreement. The buyer has sat on it for the last month, and we've been following up with our agent like, hey, your buyer still hasn't signed. What's going on? And so she's then been prompted so she can go contact the client and find out what's going on. So it's not just sitting there, like, we're following through until it's fully signed. Or if she says, hey, you know what, they changed their mind. Okay, great. Well, we prepared it, it was there, and we're just going to go ahead and close it out. You know, either way, we're following it all the way through. And then same thing as the listing paperwork, making sure it all gets submitted to the brokerage and following through on approval. And then the last item would be Now you've got your agency documents completed and the buyer now wants to write an offer on the last house you showed them. We can also help with offer drafting. So this one is huge for a lot of our dual career agents because you'll show property to them, in the evening. The next day you're at work and they decide now they want to write an offer. So, and the deadline for that offer is 5:00. How is that going to work? So a lot of times we're looped in so we can help with that preparation while our agent's working. They can do a quick review of the offer, but we can then go send it out to the client to sign and even help with delivery of the offer to the listing agent. So we'll pull the disclosures from MLS, make sure everything from the listing is included, set up the draft, send it out for buyer execution. And then if needed, we can make delivery too with you copied. But most of our agents end up doing the delivery themselves because you like to include a summary and, kind of a nice email to the listing agent where we wouldn't have some of that background. So usually best for you to do it, but if needed, we can. Okay, so those are all of our service options and how you can leverage with the TC. So the next question that we are often asked is, when should I leverage using a TC? So in the chat or give a verbal answer, what do you guys think triggers when you should hire a TC? Is there a certain number of transactions you should close before you do so? Is there a certain number of years in the business? Like, what's your qualifier for, I can get a TC now?
Bethany, I believe that an agent should at least go through the process. If they're a buyer agent, maybe twice, or an a listing agent. If they're both, representing both sides, I think a rotation of 2 on each side, primarily so that they can get a feel and understand the process. And that way, I think, when something's happening, they will have had the experience of walking through. And, they're not, it's probably going to take them a little bit longer and they're not going to be, expert in it, but at least they will understand the process. That's my thought.
Yeah.
I agree. I like telling, especially new agents, know your paperwork. That's key. Know your paperwork. Know exactly, how contract to close looks. But at the point of when you need an assistant, because as you can see with Bethany and her team, they're working as your assistant. Right. So at this point, I feel like when you need a TC is when you start missing those deadlines, when you start making too many mistakes, when you're at work and you can't keep up with sending an addendum, that the lender is waiting for, or when you're showing you need to show houses and you can't prepare a document or you can't respond. When you start getting to that, that status of business, that's when I think you need to pull in an assistant and you need to start leaning on, just leveling up your business. This is about leveling up your business. This is about freeing your time to focus on lead generating, focus on, the income producing activities and hiring someone to take care of the admin work. So I think that's, for me, that's when, guys, it's time to level up. You're all here because you wanted to know how to run your business on autopilot, which means I don't have to touch it. It's running. That's what this is. So I think that's when it's time.
Yeah.
I'll also add, just to be really transparent, because of my primary job during COVID and really until the past few months, I just stopped selling because I had a mentor who was like, you don't need a transaction coordinator. You don't do enough volume. So his was based on volume. And so I felt like, oh, maybe I'm not doing this real estate thing right. Maybe I'm not cut out for it, because I really knew I needed help. And so for me, the client relationship is so important. I would rather refer to someone who I know will take care of the client than risk dropping the ball. And so I lost a lot of business because of my mindset. of I would rather refer out because I can't get a transaction coordinator because I got to learn the paperwork, even though I have some closed transactions. So now I'm in this space of, you know what, if I'm going to be successful in this, I need a transaction coordinator now and let all of that other stuff go.
Yes, that's right, Gabriella. That's right. And I'm sorry that you were told that, but I'm happy that you're here. And that's right. Even if you have one deal, it's that one deal of assistance with Bethany and her team that will take care of you, and the referral from that deal, because it's like the way Bethany and her team will touch your clients, and you're at work and you're like, I know that they're taken care of. That is a breath of fresh air. So Gabriella, the one deal is all you need.
That's such a great point. And you know what? I pose this question, it's kind of a trick question, because from my perspective, there is no required amount of transactions, amount of GCI, anything that would qualify you for the leverage needed to help you continue to succeed in your business. I personally, and I know there's many schools of thoughts around it, I personally think agent, brand new licensed first transaction would benefit from a transaction coordinator, because what better way to set up your business than to never make that mistake of missing a deadline? From the very beginning, you're set to make sure that that's not going to happen. And the way that our process is, you can learn the whole process through your transaction coordinator, through watching what we do. We closed just over 1,900 transactions last year as a team. That's a lot of experience that you can pull from if a situation comes up in your very first transaction or your first handful of transactions, something you've never come across before. Number one, obviously your broker is going to be your best resource for things like crazy situations. However, there's also that benefit of, we've probably seen it and can at least give you perspective on, hey, here's how we saw this handled. Definitely run it by your broker and see how they would suggest you handle it. But this is what we've seen, and it's not going to be the end of the world. Like, we'll get through it, don't worry, and we'll be there to help you through that. So that's my opinion. It's not, I mean, whether you want to try out a couple transactions yourself and then add in a TC, either way, there's no right or wrong. But it's so, you know, it's really important to know and see, like, okay, where can I leverage the most of my time so that I can accomplish whatever my goals mean, whether that's to increase your real estate business, to get out of your other career and make real estate full-time, whether it's to maintain both forever, whether it's to take that vacation you haven't taken in years, or be able to just be off on a weekend and not have to worry about paperwork, like whatever that looks like. There's no wrong time to incorporate that leverage. So the other piece to that I like to always touch on is thinking about what your hourly rate is as a real estate agent. So does anyone here have an idea of what your hourly rate is as a real estate agent?
My hourly rate is $550.
$550. Okay.
That's my hourly rate.
That answer. I like that you know it.
That's my hourly rate. No one wants to hire me per hour, so they better like the house I showed them.
Exactly. Anyone else have a guesstimate, or have you ever run the math to see what your hourly rate is?
Yeah, I'm not far behind. I'm at $489.
Okay, awesome. Very cool. Good numbers. All right, so I have a little math for you here, if it will go. Okay, so I have two different equations, one with and one without a transaction coordinator. So you can kind of see the difference between the two and your hourly rate. These are obviously fictional numbers. I've just made up averages based on averages that we see. Will it go? Okay, so let's base off of a $500,000 transaction at 2.5% commission. that would be $12,500. Now, I didn't factor in here splits with brokerages and any of the other like things that you would probably equate when you're doing like a full calculation for yourself. So just bear with me. It's kind of a broad calculation, but we're going to go with $12,500, 2.5% commission. Oh, I skipped a slide. Hold on. Here. This is it. Without a transaction coordinator, same figure, 12,500 divided by number of hours worked for that transaction. So based on what we hear from agents, a typical transaction will cost you about 20 hours of work. Does that seem fair? Too high? Seem about right?
I think that's about right.
It feels like a transaction takes maybe 40 hours of work.
Yeah, so we're going on the conservative
I'll deal with
side.
20. That's a nice
Assuming
client.
20 hours worked, a pretty smooth transaction, right? Like not too many crazy hiccups, 20 hours worked. That would mean that your hourly rate at these figures would be $625 an hour. So not bad, right? You're like, okay, that's pretty good. I'm making pretty good money with that. Now, with a transaction coordinator, you have to factor in the additional costs of having that TC, right? So same commission minus the amount of your transaction coordinator's fee. So that puts your commission at $12,100 divided by 10 hours worked. So the rule of thumb is that with a transaction coordinator, you should be saving yourself at least 10 hours of work. So that cuts your time in half in this example. So 10 hours worked because you have a transaction coordinator to leverage that other 10 hours. That would mean then that your hourly rate went up to $1,210, which is a 94% increase.
Love it.
So, you know, $400 off your transaction commission can seem like, you know what, that's a lot of money. Like, I don't know if I can justify that. However, when you look at it from this perspective, where you can increase your hourly rate by 94%, how can you not do that? Now, there's other ways too to offset the transaction fee, the $400 or whatever the outcome of the cost is. We have, you know, various options where the cost could be other things other than 400. 400 is our standard fee. So other ways you can offset that are, if you're not charging an admin fee to your client, you could start charging an admin fee. Double check with your broker on any requirements around that, or if you already have a brokerage required admin fee, you could look into increasing that. So if your brokerage requires a $300 admin fee, you could increase yours to $500, and now you're offsetting the transaction fee by half. I think some of the only requirements around admin fees, and don't quote me on this, is that if you're going to do it for one client, you kind of have to be consistent. The only time you couldn't would be on those VA loan buyers or buyers, where you can't charge your admin fees. So you'd have to think about that. But there's ways to kind of offset some of those additional costs that you might have incurred by having a TC. But generally speaking, just something to keep in mind. And I would encourage you, if you haven't run what your hourly rate is now, go ahead and do that, like later tonight or sometime soon, just to kind of get a gauge, like, as of right now, what is my hourly rate? And what would that look like if I incorporated the TC fee? And how much would that increase my hourly rate by saving that time and leveraging that way? Okay. Now, just as kind of like a side topic, because I'm super interested in hearing what others are seeing in this market today. We're in a shifting market. I'm sure you guys are having conversations around this too. We are in the TC industry as well. So I'm curious to know, like, what trends are you guys seeing in today's market that maybe were different from the last year or two, or even 5, or however many years you've been in the industry?
It's so interesting that you asked the question, because I think it depends on, at least it feels like it depends on where your area, where your service area is. So I'm in
Sure.
Prince William, and I work, Prince William, Stafford, Fredericksburg down there, and so
Okay.
it's been, certainly over the last 2 years where there's been very, the slim pickings with the inventory.
Yeah.
But now we're starting to see a little more, a few more properties coming on,
Mhm.
and there's more wiggle room, as far as negotiating,
Sure.
and being able to, put your contingencies in. So
Mhm.
it's, seeing that shift, but in other areas, not so much. Some of our counterparts up in like Ashburn, Loudoun County, they're still, getting multiple offers, over asking on deals. And so very interesting to see that wide spectrum. So I'm
Yeah.
curious to see what other folks are seeing.
Yeah.
In Richmond, I was shocked last night to look on the MLS to see more than 4 or 5 properties below 250,000 that are all of a sudden popping up on the market, because I've had some first-time home buyer customers who have just sat down and they're like, we'll get back to you in the fall. And then I have a custom home family, and the house that they could have paid for in January or even in December, they can get like a third of the house now. But because of lumber prices and all that. So I'm seeing a lot of shifts and seeing shifts in land prices. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty wild. A third. Crazy. Anyone else? Anyone else seeing anything interesting?
Well, I'm with the ladies on the shift, and
Oops, you muted.
You're muted.
hey, sorry. I'm trying to be safe just in case my dog Love pops back up on the Zoom. So he likes to bark during Zoom calls. So, but just like the ladies, like I'm seeing the shift in the buyers. At first, you heard the scare of buyers scaling back because of interest rates. It seems like they are coming back in, but they are being very picky. Like they seem to love the homes and wait. Like they have this waiting period where they're like, oh, I'll just wait for more. I'll just look at more. So the rush is like slowing down with buyers, like putting in offers. And then the offers that are coming in, they are really trying it with like the home inspections and with the asking for closing costs. Like they are really trying to flip the market back to where it was. They're trying it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like common themes across the board. I mean, those are all definitely things we're hearing too. I just threw together a quick list of things we're hearing. So listings are sitting longer on the market.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing price corrections on listings again, where before you'd put a listing out there and it sold before you could even put active, that kind of craziness. And now we're seeing price corrections like that. We haven't seen that in a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Those traditional contingencies are coming back. So like you were mentioning, we're seeing those full inspection contingencies. We're seeing, full financing. Appraisals aren't being waived like they were, so less appraisal waivers and things like that. Full cost rent backs. I don't know if you guys saw a lot of like rent backs in the last couple of years.
Yes.
But
yes.
They were going for like free. Buyers paying for the pizza party for the move out, like crazy stuff, right? The days of that are gone. I feel like we're seeing like full cost rent backs. Buyers are not wavering on anything, or they're even rejecting rent backs now. Or sellers asking for those 60-day rent backs. Not anymore. You're not getting it.
No, not for free. It's gonna cost. Yeah.
And then also, like you mentioned, seller concessions. So like those buyer closing cost credits and things like that. We're seeing a lot more of that. So yeah, just some interesting things to keep in mind. So with some of the things you guys have been seeing, I mean, what are some of your ways that you're navigating these shifts or some of these changes?
Definitely trying to encourage buyers not to be afraid and giving them strategies. One of our preferred lenders, they come up with a really good um, finance packet plan. It's I think it's like a 10-year arm. And it's nice because, that interest rate is slightly lower than, the, traditional fixed, well, FHA or
Yeah.
conventional. And so making sure that we educate the buyers on strategies that they can use, even, go in, get in a property, because we know that the property values are going to continue to escalate. And you have to get in, even if it's at the ground level. We know because of the interest rate, they can't afford as much house. But if you wait and try to wait for the interest rates to go down, I think we're going to see the problem that we're seeing with the new construction. As Gabriella was mentioning, well, now we have the problem with the lumber, and new construction prices are through the roof again. So getting them, educated so that they can understand that there are options, even though the interest rates are slightly higher, but you can get in, and when they come down, you can refinance, or you can go into an arm, and so just really trying to get the buyers educated, and educate the sellers. And as Tashia was saying, listen, gone are the days where you're riding the way, and you put the with this seriously, you put the pig on the market and slap some lipstick on it and think that somebody wants it. So we're definitely outside of that, I believe. And so buyers are like, okay, I am going to be more persnickety, because if I have to just rent longer, I'm okay with that, because I'm not willing to, I'm not willing to lose on this property, or, to go in a hole on it. So I think that's kind of where we are. So almost like the stalemate, I'm not going to, who's going to blink first? So it feels like that. Would you ladies say that's about right? Are you guys seeing the same thing?
Yeah.
For sure.
And what I've been doing to bring my buyers back in and on board is I have been telling them, like, you're worried about interest rates right now. No one buys a house because of the interest rate. That we buy the house because of the home price. And if you wait this time next month, the house that you're looking at is going to be worth more. So it's best that we move now. If it's something you like, let's make this move into that. So yeah, that's how we're making it happen, Bethany.
Yeah. It's that saying, right? I heard a couple people say this recently. You can always renegotiate your interest rate. You can't renegotiate that price you buy the house at. So if you're waiting for those prices to go down, it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Right. And they're paying for the points. They're bringing it down that way. My client paid for 1 point, and they're happy.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Super interesting. Okay, cool. Well, one of the great things about having a TC and having a team like ours is that we are seeing some of these shifts even ahead of a lot of our agents. So we're able to kind of help navigate. We're always here as a resource to have these kinds of conversations. I love having these kind of conversations with all of our agents to see what they're seeing, what are we hearing, what trends are we seeing, so we can anticipate changes in the market. And like I mentioned earlier, we closed over 1,900 transactions last year. We saw a lot of trends. We saw a lot of what was happening, and we were able to help advise our agents on, hey, maybe you try this instead, because this is what we're seeing over here and it's coming your way, so we can be a resource from that perspective. And that's one of the values that we bring to the relationship with our agents, and something we strive for all the time. So, so as kind of like a final slide here, Q&A, what questions do you guys have for me?
So Bethany, can you tell them how many people are on your team and what that looks like if they were to hire you guys?
Yeah. So I have a team of 4 full-time transaction coordinators, and then we have some other kind of background help. We have leverage for ourselves as well in the background. But my 4 full-time TCs we have a combined, including me, experience in the industry of about 55 years. So lots of experience, lots of insights and knowledge behind the process. Everyone is familiar with all 3 of our main areas that we service: DC, Maryland, Virginia. We also service other areas, so not just Northern Virginia, but all the way down into like Virginia Beach. And then even like North Carolina, Delaware, Pennsylvania. We've kind of gone wherever our agents go. So we have experience with all of those different areas, the different contracts. If one of my team members hasn't seen it yet, someone probably has. So we're able to give that insight. And the way that we're structured is when you sign up with us, you're assigned to one particular team member. So you're always working with that same transaction coordinator. Now you have the whole team behind that, of course, as a resource, but you're always going to work with that same person on your contract to close files so that you guys can get into a groove, a rhythm, understand how each other operate, and just kind of get into that mode so that you know what to expect and you know their style and they know yours. And then of course, I'm always here as the CEO owner. I have one-on-ones with each of my transaction coordinators every week. We're always doing trainings. We're always keeping up with what's going on in the market. So you're always going to get that from the entire team.
Love it. And I love, guys, the one-on-one. I love that you can have a transaction coordinator, AKA assistant, and they will handle all your deals. So you learn how they work. I really love that. I love that a lot. Now, Bethany, I do want to let them know how a TC works is, guys, it's per transaction. And let's say your transaction falls through. You don't pay anything, right, Bethany? So when a transaction falls through, you guys don't pay that fee. Mm-hmm. So when you get paid, they get paid. It's a team effort. So a lot of people that have not hired TCs, it has always been because the fear of, well, what if the deal doesn't go through? And then I wanted to, make sure you ladies knew, well, if the deal doesn't go through, we keep it pushing and they're ready for the next ratified contract, So that's good to know. Another blocker that I've heard, Bethany, is, just people just not being able to take their hands off. What would you say to that person that just says, I just don't, because I was one of those people, y'all. I was one of those people until, I got busy,
Right.
and you want to grow.
What it is, I can't wrap my mind around. So this is going to give you insight into my crazy. I can't wrap my mind around like all the like getting into my MLS and like, do I have to give you my EXP password and my MLS password, or do I create new ones? I get stuck on the little stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll touch on both things. So to answer your questions first, Gabriella, because those are the easy ones. Yes, you would give us access to those platforms we would need to be able to support and leverage you. So we do have some agents that will set up separate logins for certain things if it's possible, like give it admin access or whatever. But typically it's best to just give us your access. We do obviously we have to keep your logins stored on our end. We keep it secure. We don't share it with anybody. Only your TC is using it. The only other time someone else would use it is if we're covering for each other. So like if your TC takes a vacation and someone else like me or another team member is covering so that your stuff is still happening, someone else would need the login. So we do share it internally, but we're not going to disperse it out anywhere else. So from a confidentiality and kind of keeping everything secure, we definitely do that and recognize, you're giving access to the back end of your business. Like that's kind of a big deal. So we recognize that and we, do our best to kind of keep everything really secure and simple. But also getting access allows us to do some of those things for you when you can't do it. So if you need help with the paperwork, we're going to need access to your forms. We're going to need access to your e-signature platform. If you want us to submit for compliance, like, yes, we're going to need access to SkySlope, and we'll make sure everything gets submitted. You can always see everything that happened, right? So if we're using your account, for sure, you see what's happened in there. And if you know you didn't do it, you can assume your TC did it, right? But the other thing is, like, for paperwork, like, we're not ever going to just send something out without you knowing. So you don't have to worry about us going rogue and like sending an addendum out that you didn't already discuss with your client. You're going to have already had that conversation, done the negotiations, and then we're going to upload something for signature or send it out. And same for MLS. I think you mentioned you're in Richmond. Did I hear that right? Okay. So, you know, the different areas in Virginia, there are some limitations and restrictions to some of the MLSs, and we could discuss that if there are any restrictions. We have our own Bright MLS for Northern Virginia. We've been open to and have established accounts in other MLS systems. So those are all things we can discuss too if there are any like big restrictions with us using your login. So we can talk about that when that comes up. In terms of like giving up of control, which is basically one of the things that, yeah, we hear all the time, and we totally get it. Like, this is your business, this is your livelihood, your baby, you know, we understand. I would say the biggest thing is thinking in terms of like, what are your goals for your business? And is giving up control of sending that document for signature gonna hold me back from hitting those goals? Like, just kind of coming to grips of like, what does it mean to my business and my goals to not add this leverage, give up that control to someone? We have, like I said, we have experience. We've been doing this 55 years as a collective whole. You're in great hands. You know,
Yes.
it's going to happen. We have a system and a process that's proven, that's going to be consistent, duplicatable, to the point that you're going to know from a predictable standpoint everything that's going to happen on every deal. There's no surprises. So that definitely helps with like the mindset of, okay, let me just let go, trust that it's going to happen, and allow that to happen, and allow myself the leverage that I need to hit my goals.
And you know, I have one better for you guys. I would say just start with one. Just say my next transaction, I'm going to try and hire my real estate assistant for this first transaction and see how it goes. Like, instead of just saying, okay, I'm giving everything away, just first take baby steps, and you guys commit to hiring your assistant, Bethany, and her team for one transaction, and just see how it goes, and see if life was easier while you were working your 9 to 5 and the transaction was moving and you didn't have to do anything but approve something, you know, and then you caught up to the emails and you're like, oh my gosh, they did everything. So just at least see if it helps you. If it helps you, then you know you're on to something. If it was just too much and you're like, oh my gosh, no, this, I could have did without this. I had to follow up with them every day. Like, if it's something like that, then you know it doesn't work, but you don't know unless you try. So a lot of being a top producer, a lot of moving forward, guys, is taking the first step. So take the first step.
Yeah, we've had quite a few agents over the years that were hesitant, and they got super busy, and then they just threw everything at us, and that's great, we can handle it. However, it didn't allow them the opportunity to see how the whole process works. So they were still holding on even after they gave it all to us, which actually makes our job harder, just as a side note. So it took more time to get into a groove when that happened versus, hey, I'm going to just try this one, really pay attention to the whole process, really get bought into the leverage, and understand that this is a partnership. We're all looking towards the same end goal of getting this thing to closing. Like, they've got my back, they're helping to make me look good, you know, and like, we're a team. Doing that with like one or two to start off with, just to kind of get that groove, absolutely is a great idea. And then the other thing that came to mind was like last summer, for instance, we had a couple of new dual career agents come on and they were just burnout, and it's just been such a struggle for them getting their business going and keeping their 9 to 5. And they want to take this vacation because it's summer and school just got out. Like we were literally this time of year, and we had just gotten started with an agent. She finally let go, added that leverage, and then took that vacation and literally unplugged while she was on vacation. Not totally unplugged. I mean, she was keeping up with what was happening. But she said to me one day, she's like, Bethany, it was so great. I was sitting on the beach and I picked up my phone like after a few hours and was like, oh, look at all this work that I've been doing. And it was her TC, like answering emails, doing all this stuff. And she's like, oh, look what we did. And just scrolling through, saw everything was good to go, put the phone back down. Like it was a 5-minute check-in, make sure nothing was blowing up. And then she went back to her vacation. And she's like, I never would have been able to do that if I didn't have a TC, because guess what? I would have had to be responsible for all these emails, those documents that needed to be collected, whatever it was. So to me, that's like our ultimate goal, is to hear stories like that and see the success that agents have by adding leverage that otherwise they felt either they didn't qualify for or had limiting beliefs on being able to let go of their business themselves and allow someone else to help.
Bethany, can you speak to the onboarding process? What does that look like?
Yeah. So actually my very next slide, I'll just go ahead and pop right over to that, is how do I get started? So the QR code here will take you to the same link that's at the bottom. This is a link to our setup form. So the onboarding process is super fast and simple. We can literally have you onboarded within 1 business day and start a new transaction. Like it's very quick. It's a setup form that sets up your profile. It's very basic information, like your contact details, your best method of communication, what's your compliance process for your brokerage, some of those initial questions we would have. We set up an introduction call. So you would actually put into the setup form when you want your introduction call with your TC. I then take the setup form, we get it all in our system. I'll make an introduction to you and your TC via email. Then you guys will have your intro call, go over any questions. They'll give you background on them. You give them background on you, answer any, initial questions that you might have about the process. And then you get started. So similarly to the setup, we have an intake link that you'll be provided to submit any new contracts to us. And then for new contracts, within 1 business day of receiving that intake and the ratified contract, we start our process, get the whole file set up, all the deadlines plotted and everything in our system, and introduction emails go out to all parties with a copy of the contract within 1 business day.
Okay, so there's no like back office or anything that we would log into to actually see, the different stages.
Yeah, so unfortunately, no. Like our platform doesn't provide like a consumer facing access. The weekly update is your best access to like what's going on in the transaction, what's happened in the previous week. And also you're included on all of our communication that we're sending out. So most of the time, our initial transaction with a new agent would be you're on every email. Every request we send out, every update we send out, you're on everything. And then typically after 1 or 2, our agents will be like, okay, like just put me on the important emails. You can scale back on the updates. I don't need to see you chasing the lender. I trust that you're doing it. Just let me know if there's a problem. And then we can scale back the emails. But if you're one that likes to know everything that's going on, then you would appreciate, having that CC. And then that gives you the opportunity to chime in too. Like, hey, yeah, actually we had a side conversation about that. Here's what's going on, or whatever might happen. So email updates and then that weekly Friday touch with all the tasks is how you're going to see what's happening.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. And then I'll also note, so there's the intake that you'll have for any new ratified contract to close processes. And then for our time saver services, which would be like the listing agreement preparation, MLS entry, offer drafting, there's a separate form for that. Just has some additional details we would need depending on the service that you're choosing. And let me see, I can actually just, maybe I'll pull it up and show you guys. me get over to that. Okay, share.
Hey, Sonia. Hey, Delilah.
Okay, can you guys see this page?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So this is our time saver services intake. And as you can see, it covers all of those options and it's multiple selections. So like if you have a new listing, right, and you want to do listing agency document preparation, you want compliance with that, and you want MLS entry. So you can choose multiple selections. And then based on those selections, it opens up additional sections of the form. So then you would fill out whatever is pertinent to the services that you want, and also gives you some background information on what to expect from that service request. So for a listing agreement that needs to be prepared, it tells you here, like, okay, you submit us this information, we'll have a draft turned around to you within 1 business day. So it gives you the expectations right here so you can know what to expect. And then you'll hear from your transaction coordinator to let you know they got it and any questions that they might have. And then the other thing to note about our time saver services is that they are an upfront cost. So I know we mentioned earlier about the TC fee being only paid when the transaction closes, which is absolutely true. These services we do charge for at the time that we're doing them. The TC fee would be then paid once the transaction is confirmed closed. So that way, if you decide you want to have us help with the listing agreement, but then later you choose to not use the contract to close service, all totally optional, then you don't have to. So there's no like, they all work together, but they're all separate for that purpose. So you can decide based on your budget, what works, what doesn't, what makes sense. And then similar format for the contract to close. Intake form with pertinent information. Some fields are required, others are optional. And then if you're here and you're like, oh wait, actually I need to submit a time saver service, you can just click the link here and it will take you to the other one. And then these are actually available right on our website. So this is our website, and right here you can see the 2 options. So super simple. What else? What other questions you guys have?
I may have missed it. Great information. Definitely my last transaction. This would have been great because while I was at work, a couple things happened. So
Okay.
if I'm out showing a property and I'm sorry, if I'm out showing a property and let's say we're doing it on Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
and the transaction, I'm sorry, the offer has to be submitted by Sunday at 5. So I can do all of that and then I can send the contract over to you. So if I did the contract myself, so if all offers had to be submitted by 5 o'clock on Sunday and I've already submitted my offer,
Yeah.
then once it's ratified, then I can send it to you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. As soon as that offer is accepted and ratified, then you would send it to your TC. But actually that brings up a good other point, which I hadn't mentioned yet, is that for offer drafting, we do have a team member who makes herself available on call for the weekends. So she does offer drafting for some of our agents. There is an additional cost. So instead of $100 per offer, it would be $200 for that weekend availability. But it is great for those situations where you are in a bind. You do have that Sunday at 5 o'clock offer deadline and you're trying to, be off on Saturday for your kids, sports game, like whatever it is, but you need to leverage that offer draft so that you can meet that deadline. It is an option. So what you would do is fill out the intake. There is a question on there. Is this a weekend offer? You would select yes, text my team member, Amy, to let her know it's coming, and then she can let you know an expected turnaround. So you might be submitting it Saturday morning and say, hey, the offer deadline's tomorrow. She can say, okay, great. I will get that draft over to you today, or I'll get it to you first thing tomorrow morning because the deadline's not till 5. Then you guys will go back and forth on her turnaround availability and expectations.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and basically any new, ratified contract that you might have on like a Friday or over the weekend, the expectation then would be that the introductions and everything would go out before the end of the day Monday. So if you sent it over Friday night, they'd get started on it first thing Monday, introductions would go out.
Have you guys noticed on the other side of your transactions lately, a lot of agents have TCs now? Have you guys been seeing those emails come out? Yeah, I've been noticing that. A lot of the agents, their TCs have been emailing, here, this is the deadline. This is when it's due. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I just did a transaction where I talked to the agent during negotiations, and once we ratified, the next time I heard from her was a thank you. It's been great working with you. Everything else was TC.
Yes.
That's a sign of a good TC for sure.
Yes. Like I forgot that I was even like in the contract with the TC. Like I thought the TC was the agent. That's how good that TC was.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, she's like, what was the issue? Closing was delayed, and she kept emailing, and she was on point, and she was like, I'm not understanding the delay, you know, and then she was like responding like she was the agent. I'm like, whoa,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a fine line between the way that you can communicate as a TC that's not licensed. Maybe she was licensed. I will say that we do kind of take that approach of like, some people we've gotten feedback from some agents on the other side, like, oh, your TC is a pit bull, you know, like she's like on it, like she's ruthless, you know, and that's what we do. I mean, that's what we're here for. Like, we're going to be the ones to like hound people down. Like, hey, do you have that addendum signed? Do you have that addendum signed?
That's right.
That addendum, like, get me what I need.
That's right.
That's what we're doing. Like, we set up those reminders. We do that kind of stuff. And absolutely, if a lender is not getting back to us or we're sensing an issue, we'll be like, what's going on? Looping in their manager, looping in the other agent. Like, I throw everybody on the email. What's happening? Are we closing? Does anybody care? Is anybody out there? Like, I've literally sent emails like that. Like, am I the only one that wants to get this thing to close? No one's responding.
Like, how cool is it that she takes all of that frustration off of you guys, right?
Or at least like you have someone to share in the frustration with, right?
Yes.
I'll be texting with my agent like, oh my gosh, what is going on with this? Like, this lender is a piece of work or whatever. And we can kind of, you know, commemorate on
Let's
like,
vent together.
Like the crazy that happens. I mean, it happens. So
yes.
Someone to help kind of keep the ball rolling and like keep the, you know, the motions going and keep people on their toes.
Yes. Thank you, Bethany.
Fun times.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? What'd you say, Gabriella?
I said, so now I'll follow through with filling out my intake form with Amy. I've had it for months.
Oh,
so
really?
I've really enjoyed this presentation.
Yeah,
really understanding it. So thank you both.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yay. Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. Excellent.
Do it, girl. No more turning down clients. You're well equipped and you're prepared. You got this.
The other thing I'll mention too is we do have a referral incentive program. So what that means is when you become a agent partner with us and you're closing transactions, if and when you decided to refer us to another colleague or agent that you know, and they become an agent partner with us, you'll each get $50 off your next transaction.
Oh, nice.
For the referral. Yeah. So just keep that in mind as you guys are, you know, talking with your other agents and people you know that might be in need of some of these services. We'd love to talk with them and see if it's a good fit. And then you guys both get that little thank you at the end of your next transaction.
Thank you. That's nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any more questions, ladies?
I'm sorry, very late, but I was wondering if there was a website you can share where I can maybe go online and get some more information of what I missed.
Yeah, certainly. So
and I'm recording too, so I'll have the recording for you.
Perfect.
Yeah, so let me just share my screen one more time to that last slide.
Okay.
So here, our website's here at the bottom, mreassist.com. So we have a lot of information there. But if you also, so signing up using our setup form doesn't obligate you to anything. I don't know if I mentioned that, but like this is not a contract or obligation. It just simply gets your profile set up. So if you were interested in just having more conversations, getting in our system, go ahead and fill out that setup form, and then we can always schedule that introduction call to just kind of go over more of the details if you would like. And again, doesn't obligate you to anything, just kind of gets you on my radar, and then we can continue from there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else, ladies, before we let Bethany go?
Well, this was a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much. I
Yay,
really
thank you,
appreciate
Bethany.
you guys being on
Yes,
here
thank you for your time, for sure.
yeah, and letting me test out my PowerPoint. So thank you.
It was awesome. It was real good.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hope to chat with you guys soon.
Yes.
Absolutely, for sure. And I'll be, certainly, I have a mastermind scheduled this coming Saturday. So I
Okay.
will make sure, as we, last month, we talked about systems, having
Okay.
systems in place. So, yes,
Okay.
I will make sure that, that I make sure that I give you a shout out on this Saturday's
Thank
call.
you. Oh, thank you so much.
Yes.
That would be, yeah, greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.
For sure, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And Tashia, thank you for
Welcome.
always coming out with great information and for challenging us to make no excuses.
No excuses. Just takes the first one to get us through that loop, you know,
Yeah.
and then it's on from there. So
Yeah.
I've been there. I've been that person that couldn't let go. Even when I spoke with Bethany in Autumn, I was like, it's just so hard. It's just so hard.
Yeah, and like I said, we all totally understand. So, you know, we're here to help talk you through it,
Yes.
give you that confidence, and yeah.
Yeah.
Just
I promise you guys need to be lead generating. We don't got time to be doing paperwork like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to be lead generating. So that's going to be our next call. I won't hold Bethany up.
Well, thank you guys so much. Hope you have a great evening, and let me know if there's anything we can do to help, and set up form. We'll get you going.
Thank you, Bethany.
Thanks, ladies. Have a
Thank
good
you.
Bye,
evening, ladies.
ladies.
Bye-bye.
See you later.